Spantopia Rose, but you can call me Span. How are you? 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 I'm okay. I'm hanging in there. I'm holding up. If you have any further questions, please leave them below. Leave them below. Leave them below. I am more than happy to do this as an ongoing series. If I get questions, I will answer them. This is gonna be a very long video. I apologize. I thought I cannot possibly wait any longer, and I would like to do my Q&A right now, please. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to answer the questions from last week, and then invite you to ask more questions below if you have any more questions, and then I'll make another response video to those questions next week. So yeah, this is going to be an Ask Me Anything, a Q&A, an answer reveal party. Yeah, so I'm going to be answering the questions from last week about my autism right now. So I'm just going to pull up the Google, what do you call that? The YouTube, and go to that particular thing right now. I'm currently watching a video called Rating TikTok Art Tips by Sam Does Arts. Sam Does Arts, and he's great. So it is currently Autism Acceptance Month. Autism Acceptance Month, which is April. I got diagnosed with autism in March last year, March 2021. So that's about a year ago. So I've had 12 months to fully research and obsess over and hyperfixate on autism and how that's affected me in my life. So I'm open to any questions. This video is going to be chaos. Alright, just ignore any background noises you can hear. It's fine. We're going to persevere because I've had coffee and I've got it in my mind that I wanted to do this. This coffee might be the size of my head, but I'm not going to die. It's fine. So I'm doing an Ask Me Anything and a Q&A. So if you have any more questions, please leave them below. But for now, I will go through and ask them as they are coming up in order. The first question that I've got, the first comment that I've got is not a question, it's just a comment on my nail polish that is gorgeous and shiny, and thank you for wearing it. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so the next three questions are from Abby. When I was a kid, I had a doll. I still have her somewhere. I think she's up in my cupboard. Abby was the name of my doll, and her name was Abby because I couldn't pronounce baby, so I would call it Abby. So Abby says, perfect timing for me going to bed. Amazing as always, Ben. Thank you, Abby. With my autism, I struggled with reading. Did you have any problems in school? Love you, Span. Did I have any problems? I didn't have any problems with reading or with English, but I struggled really hard with like maths. I would have meltdowns in maths quite consistently because I felt so stupid for not understanding, and they would explain it to me, and I'd be like, but I just couldn't get it. And they were like, well, what, are you not paying attention? And like, yes, I was paying attention and I was trying, which led me to not be able to understand still. So then I would be having crying, screaming matches with the teachers. I had a comment in my report card from a maths teacher that said, Anna and I get along quite well. Anna and maths, however, which was just like, that was fine because I that's where the problem was. It wasn't with the teacher, it was with the subject. I just couldn't do math. But I did well in like English and in arts, but I did not do well in like maths or sciences or history, or I did okay in history, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I did with English. I was in a double major English, and in year 11 I did amazingly. We had a great teacher, subject was wonderful, I was getting A's, and then the next time we had a teacher that I clashed with. She was an awful person. The entire class hated her, and I went from getting A's to barely passing. Like, the subject hadn't changed, the difficulty hadn't changed, but the teacher, the clash there meant that even though I did the work and tried to understand to the best of my ability, I was barely scraping through. So yeah, there was lots of struggles in school. I had lots of problems, lots and lots and lots of problems. That's just high school. That's just me remembering high school. But in primary school, I managed. I floated by. I did okay. I was okay in primary school. A lot of it for me was trying to work out who my friends were and trying not to get bullied and hanging out with the two people who would hang out with me, or not so much focused on the schoolwork and stuff, although I did never get my pen license and I was many pages behind in handwriting, so I think learning to actually write as a kid was harder for me. Yeah, school was a mess. I did not like school. I would never wish to go back there at all, ever. So Abby, your next question is, what is my favourite special interest? So, at the moment, my special interests are sort of waning a little bit. But I guess I've always had a special interest in, like, arts, and I guess maybe communication, which is why I have this channel now that I think about it. But my absolute favourite special interest has got to be The Sims, right? I have a piece of paper here. One moment. This is The Sims. This is a like a leaflet out of the front of the CD for the CD-ROM game of The Sims from the year 2001 maybe. So I was like 10 or 11 when this came out, and I remember one of my friends had it first, he used to babysit me. It was a couple of years, one of my brother's friends. Warren had it before me, and I used to play it at his house, and then eventually I got it as well, and this is the little piece of paper that came, this is the cover art, and I just, look at it, it's amazing, and I love it. So I have a special interest in The Sims, but that doesn't mean that I know anything about it in particular. It doesn't mean I can info dump about it for you. I love it. It gives me the dopamine. And another thing that does that I do love is The Lion King. I was going to show you my cup, but I'm not using it at the moment. So The Lion King, again, is one of those interests where I am obsessed with anything. Lion King is amazing. Anything The Sims is amazing. I have been playing The Sims for, 21 years now? 21 years now. Sims 4, not my favourite. I am waiting for Sims 5. I really hope that it's not multiplayer. That's my number one fear, is that I won't be able to play it by myself in my room for 12 hours straight. But yeah, I think Sims franchise is definitely one of my favourite special interests, and Disney a little bit too, but specifically The Lion King. I get little hits of joy when I see things that are Lion King themed, and I will be doing a video, I promise, one day I will be doing a video about all of the things that I own that are Lion King flavoured, themed. That's gonna fall. I need to protect it more. I should get it covered in plastic. What do you call that? Laminated. Anyway, hello David Parnell. Hi. Comments every time. I love it. I'm just gonna go through and like these as I answer them. Hello David. Okay, so the next one is slow motion ASMR. Fantastic channel, go check him out, it's amazing. I haven't been watching ASMR recently much. I've been listening to Headspace sleep stories to get to sleep, and the one I've been listening to most recently is my beard hair. Anyway, the one I've been listening to most often recently is Midnight Laundrette, which has just been knocking me out pretty steadily this last few days. But slow motion ASMR asks, at work I often struggle to hold my focus on things. I tend to zone out a lot. Do you ever find yourself zoning out often? Oh man, yes. So I am unemployed. I can't do having a job. It doesn't sit. I have panic attacks. Constantly. I realize that I haven't been doing what the job was, and then I have a panic attack about that. So yeah, I zone out. I was a checkout chick for a bit at Kmart, and that was horrendous. It was so bad. But it made me physically sick to work in, what do you call that? Can't remember what that's called. Anyway, but very easily distracted. I will be doing something and thinking about something else entirely, to the point that I will have stopped doing the thing that I was doing without realizing that I'd stopped doing it. The most annoying time that this happens is when I'm reading, for me, because I don't have a job and I don't have other things that I'm actually doing. Sometimes I do it while I'm editing, and that's annoying, but I find that it's more immersive, so I'm less likely to be distracted from things I am focused in on. But if I'm doing something I'm not interested in, I don't have a chance. But yeah, so if I'm reading and I'm enjoying the book that I'm reading, but then I just start doing something else in my head, or thinking about other things, or 10 other things will be happening in my brain while I'm trying to process what I'm reading, I won't have a clue. I will have read 10 pages and I won't have remembered a single word of that. I will have read them. I would have known, like, my eyes have done the thing, my mouth has done the thing, but I don't know what it said. I have no idea. So then I have to go back until I find the page where I remember what was happening, and then be like, okay, pay attention, span, pay attention. Eventually I will get back into reading, or I will just put the book down and be like, you know what, I actually cannot focus enough to read right now. But I do love reading, so I go through bursts of, I'm gonna read this and it's gonna be all I'm consumed and thinking about, and then I go through bursts of, I actually cannot physically bring myself to read at all. If I'm hanging out with people in like a group setting, I will also find myself have zoned out. They'll all be talking about something. I won't have a clue what they were talking about. I might have been actively involved in the conversation earlier, and then now I don't even know what I was doing, but it's gone. I don't know what everyone was talking about. This happened on last Friday night. I was at a painting minis at my boyfriend's house with all his friends, and I think it happened 3 times because I was focusing on doing the painting, that then somebody would say something and I'd just be like, what? What? Yeah. Okay. Hope that answers that. Yes, easily distracted. If I'm not particularly interested in something, I am easily zoned out and in another place, or 10 in my head. I have a constant monologue in my head, constantly talking to me, narrating almost everything. So and it's often multiple voices saying multiple things from multiple perspectives all at once. So that's fun. Anyway, okay, Tina Dasgupta. I'm not pronouncing that right. I'm so sorry. Dasgupta. Dasgupta. So Tina, what do I do for a living other than ASMR? I already answered your question. I'm sorry. I currently am unemployed, but I am an artist. I do sell some commissioned artworks, and I do ASMR now, which is monetized, which is so wonderful. Yeah, so if you want to support my I just got distracted by the end of your... Okay, so do I zone out? Yes, completely. Okay, so what do I do for a living other than ASMR, and does autism affect it? Yes. Autism affects everything in my life, but especially like social stuff. So being a checkout chick in Kmart, or answering phones at my dad's old office, or just having any sort of job where I have any pressure to be social, which is every job ever. I can't do that very well, or I can do it very well in small bursts of time because I'm very good at masking. I used to be an archaeological assistant with my mum, but then I had that support person, that body double of my mum, and that security of having her there to work with me. So I was quite good at it in small bursts of time because I could mask really hard. I didn't know it was called masking at that time. I just thought that I could do it, but it was really, really hard. And then I would have meltdowns and what I thought was just exhaustion or tiredness, or I don't know, I would hate myself so much for the after effects of having masked so hard at work or school. School was not sustainable for me as a autistic child. Okay. So, what did I do for a living other than ASMR? I do art, and if you would like to check out or support me as a visual artist, you can go to Spantmade on Instagram. I used to have an Etsy shop, but the pressure of that and the hidden fees and all of those things got too much for me, so now I do individual based, just commissions one-on-one when I have something that when somebody approaches me, basically. I will do commissions. So commissions are open, and I do wood burning, pyrography, and digital art, and painting, and photography, and I do a lot of different things. Jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah, so it is great that this has been monetized and can be a source of income, but what I do for a living is because I live in Australia and I am disabled, I have got the disability pension, so I do have an income that I can live off. It's not high by any means, but I can pay my rent and usually feed myself on that income alone. So yeah, I can just get by on my DSP pension, which is good. It's getting harder, but yeah, that's why I'm trying harder to monetize and do commissions and stuff, which I have been getting a lot of recently, so I'm very happy with that. Thank you. So if you do wish to support me, head over to Spantmade on Instagram and follow me there. Like and subscribe to this channel here, and also I do have a Patreon, where I will do shout out videos and things such like that for different tiers over on Patreon. You can check that out too. All of the links will be in the doobly-doo. Alright, thank you, Dina. Thank you. Christian asks, am I secretly a cat? No. How dare you? Because that's something I have to go and get. Alright, I'm back. So, Christian, no, I'm not a cat. However, this is a really great... Sorry, just had those on backwards, doesn't really matter, it's just what this... Anyway, I did buy this book that's called All Cats Are on the Autism Spectrum. So, I mean, yes, a lot of the traits that cats show are autistic traits, so you're onto something, but also not a cat. Cats are on the autism spectrum. All birds have anxiety, and all dogs have ADHD. So we'll see if these are good resources or not in another video, but yeah, so not a cat, just autistic. Get off our backs, we're just autistic. Right, anybody remember that about the albinos? So Christian, as much as you want me to be, Cara, hello Cara. Growing up, did you ever think that you had autism? Was your family surprised when you told them? Did people treat you differently when you told them? And was it hard for you to accept that you had autism? Okay, there's a bunch of questions, Cara, and I love them all. Sorry about playing with my necklace. Alright, so growing up, did I ever think that I had autism? Not in so many words. I didn't know, I wasn't very familiar with autism or what autism actually was, and especially not atypical or female, which it's not actually female, but female. It's not gender related, but it is a little bit. So I didn't know how autism would present in an individual, such as myself, and in atypical autism, I thought of autistic in a very stereotypical, very male orientated, male, in the bias way that media portrays it, and I had very limited understanding. I'd never looked into it, I'd never done anything like that at all. And then when I was a little bit older, my mum worked with a autistic child who was very different from me, and my mum never picked up on me being similar to them at all, because it is such a wide and varied spectrum that it presents itself in such different ways that it seems very dissimilar sometimes in different people, but we're all autistic. It's all encompassing, so I didn't have any reference to judge myself on or by, and I never even thought to look it up. I never thought, oh, I could be autistic. I did, however, think I'm different to everybody else that I know. People my age are so weird. I will never fit in with this friends group. What do I have to do to make them like me? All the time growing up, I would try to fit in with my friend group, and I was just always so different, so removed, and everything about me was so controlled by me so that I could exist without being bullied, without being looked at funny, without having negative consequences in some way because of just letting me do whatever I want or whatever I felt like doing. I was very weird. I was a weird kid. I would eat the edges of the books. I loved chewing on paper. I would I would always have blue tack when I was a small child. I'd have blue tack and I'd chew on it. I would rip the edges of books out and eat the paper of the books that I was reading. In year 3, I had a horrible teacher who took a book away from me because I was reading it above my reading level. I was reading that book and she took it away for months, and then eventually I found it again, but I'd finished reading it. It was called something to do with puppies. Hi Fella. It was called Hi Fella, and it was like a novel instead of like a picture book, and she took the book away from me. It wasn't even like because it had bad content. It was about a family of puppies and it was so cute getting adopted. Anyway, I'm still mad about that. I'm still rageous. I remember in one of the classes we were getting read a Roald Dahl story, and every single person in that classroom loved it except for me, and that was the last time I ever said I didn't like something that everybody else liked in that moment, because I was asked to explain why I didn't like it, and I was just like panic. I just completely had a meltdown, probably. Now that we know what the words are, I had a panic attack, I had a meltdown, and I just couldn't deal with being the only person different. I just wanted to fit in. Anyway, so no, I didn't ever think I had autism growing up, but I did know that I was majorly different, and I thought I was so misunderstood and no one would ever understand me, and I felt very lonely and isolated, and like I'd never have a best friend. I had a few friends, but and like I still have those friends. I still have a couple of those friends today, but I never had that connection that I was looking for, or that I thought other people had, or if I did, I couldn't recognize it. Alright, so growing up, did you ever think you had autism? Not really. Was your family surprised when you told them? Yeah, so for the autism assessment itself, I had to have someone who knew me in childhood to talk about me with the assessor. So I had my mum and my sister go in together to do that, because my mum didn't think that I had autism. She was just like, this. She's against labels anyway, but I thought she might be a little bit negatively biased, and that's completely fine. And so I also sent in my sister with her as well, so they could talk about it together with the assessor. But yeah, they were surprised. My dad wasn't surprised at all. He was like, I've often thought I might be autistic, and I was like, nobody told me this before, Dad. I'm not sure about Nomis. My brother, it's hard to know anything what he thinks. But he's supportive. All of my family have been very supportive, yeah. But yeah, a little bit surprised, especially because I was 31. I was 30. Is that right? Especially because I was in my 30s when I got my diagnosis. Like, yeah, it is so obvious to me now that I'm autistic, but it was a surprise and a shock to all of us, really. Did people treat me differently when I told them? No, not really. Or only so much in that we can be like, oh, maybe that's because of autism, so it's more a reflection on why maybe I do the things that I do. And then we'll talk about it in reference to the autism instead of just why things are like they are. So I have not noticed a significant shift in the way anyone treats me within my family and friend circles and stuff. One of my closest friends is autistic and got diagnosed very young. And a lot of how I've had anxiety disorder diagnosed for many years, since I was like 14. Generalized anxiety disorder, and a lot of my symptoms that I thought were generalized anxiety disorder correlated with her and her autism. But even then, I didn't once think maybe I'm autistic. I just thought, oh, isn't it interesting that they're so similar? Yeah, so I still do have anxiety disorder, that's 100% true. I just also have autism and probably ADHD and depression and a myriad of things. I don't have any people who are not really close to me. I don't have any like acquaintances, I guess, that I have noticed have acted any differently around me. I'm just Span. I've always been a bit weird, so it's just like nothing to them, and then like earth-shattering to me, I guess. Was it hard for me to accept that you had autism? Yeah, I did notice I used the word earth-shattering, so it must have been, I guess. Yeah, I find it really hard both to fully acknowledge that I was right my entire life. I am different. I do experience the world differently to a majority of my peers. I am neurodivergent. There is something intrinsically different about me. I was right. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, now I'm never going to be the person I thought I was going to be, who was this not weird, not autistic person who was like flourishing and being social and putting on makeup and going out dancing. Like, I just don't want those things. And like, makeup makes my skin crawl and I want to scratch my face off, and going out to a party dressing up in uncomfortable clothes and going out to a loud noisy party with lots of people is something that I think that I should want, but I don't. And there is no should, right? So it's want or want not. There is no should. This is the best advice that my counsellor has given me so far. Want or want not. There is no should. So all of my life I've been masking, trying to work out what I should be doing at any point in my life. What should I be doing? And now that I'm autistic, it's like, well, do you even want that? Like, do you want that? You don't want that. You don't have to do that. So the act of unmasking is very difficult. I'm masking all of the time. Even now, when I know that I'm talking about unmasking and trying to unmask, it's difficult. This is gonna be a very long video, I apologize. But yeah, when I first found out that I had autism, I got the diagnosis on the Friday, and then I stayed at my boyfriend's house that night. And I just cried. I just cried and cried and cried. But yeah, it's a long time. It's taking a long time. It's frustrating because you know about your limits, you know your limitations, and you're learning your limitations. And then you've got to learn to accept those limitations. But it's also a little bit empowering because I was right. And there is something different about me, and it's not necessarily wrong, which is where the acceptance comes in, you know. But yeah, I love that I have the autism diagnosis now, and I do think self-diagnosis is entirely valid, and I think that if I had looked into autism and not self-diagnosed myself as autistic first, I wouldn't have bothered to get the assessment, because the assessment was thousands of dollars, and a very long, complicated, stressful process. And I think if I hadn't done my research before, I would have. And I've thought, oh, I don't relate to any of this, I wouldn't have gone through with it. But because I self-diagnosed and then had that backed up by an official diagnosis, yeah. So I probably have known that I'm autistic for a little bit longer than that, but I've only had it medically, professionally diagnosed since then, recognised. So yes, it is hard to accept, but I'm getting there, you know. Alright, Halen. Hello, Halen. Hi. I hope you're doing well too, Halen. I really hope you're doing well. So Halen is wondering if there are any stereotypes surrounding autism that I wish people didn't assume everyone with autism has. Right, yeah. So they have ADHD and hear stereotypes all the time that I don't like hearing. Thanks for being so open. Oh, you're amazing. So thanks. I think it's interesting when people thank me for being so open. I think maybe it's an autism thing, but I feel like if I'm not open about it, part of me feels like I'm lying. So I like to tell truths. I like to explain what I mean, and I love to talk about autism. So to me, it's not. I mean, I don't feel vulnerable talking about all of this stuff. I do feel like I'm open, in that I'm welcoming all of the questions, and I'm welcoming and I'm telling everything that I want to tell. And by want to tell, I mean that I can think of that fits the questions. So I am being open. I just don't feel like that's something that that you should be grateful for, or that you should. I don't know. It's a weird thing, but I guess thank you for thanking me on being open. I guess you're welcome. It's just how I am, I guess. It's not something I do on purpose. I do think these things need to be talked about, so I just talk about them. I don't know. There's a weird feeling there for me, about not feeling vulnerable, but actually being vulnerable. Yeah, I don't know. I gotta look into what's going on in my mind there about that. But the question is, are there any stereotypes surrounding autism that I wish people didn't assume everyone with autism has? Yeah. So the thing with autism is that it's a spectrum. I think the thing with autism is that everyone's a little bit autistic is a lie. Everyone might have autistic trait or two, but it doesn't affect them in their everyday life so much that it is impacting their lives, right? So I'm autistic because all of the things that I have that are traits of autism affect my everyday life so much that it makes it really hard for me to function, and it negatively affects my life, or just saturatingly affects my life. It doesn't necessarily have to be negative, but that's what it feels like. Part 2. Alright, so the card was just full and we had to stop and export a whole bunch of stuff, and now I have come back and it's a little bit while later for me, so I can't remember exactly where I was up to, but I was answering Halen's question, so I'm just going to go back, reread the question, and then continue and then answer it because I don't know where I was up to. So, hey Span, I hope you're doing well. I'm wondering if there are any stereotypes surrounding autism that you wish people didn't assume everyone with autism has. Okay, I've ADHD and hear stereotypes all the time that I don't like hearing. Okay, so what are stereotypes surrounding autism that I wish people didn't assume? Alright, so a lot of the stereotypical autism stuff that doesn't apply to me is the maths, the genius trait, the savant. I guess I feel like there's a lot of pressure for me to be a genius when I'm just average. But especially around maths and counting and all, like the memory, those specific details for memory. I have terrible working memory. I can't remember anything. I'm really bad with memory. But yeah, a lot of people assume that if you've got autism, you're going to be really good at something, and that something is probably going to be maths, and it's going to be analytical, and it's going to be critical. And I can be analytical and critical, just I don't think that way about numbers. Yeah, so I also think there's a huge stigma around autism being for white male children. Even the literal diagnosis of autism is so white male boy centric for children, for male children in the classic white society. That's what the DSM looks at, even now that we're getting more recognition for atypical type autism. So for different areas of the spectrum are getting recognized now, which is wonderful. But it's only just really scraping the surfaces, you know. There's still a lot of stigma around, oh, you don't look autistic. Like there is no autism look. Like that just doesn't make any sense. So I guess the stigmas that I think are attached negatively and stereotypically to autism are male orientated white boy children, are really good at maths, or you must be amazing at maths, or you don't look autistic. You don't look autistic is one of the weirdest ones because it assumes that there is a look to something that is a wide spectrum. It's like they want you to perform autism traits, like, because you're really good at masking. Like, I don't know, it's weird. It's a weird one. But another thing that really that really gets me about stereotypes surrounding autism is the expressions and the emotions. So there's a big stereotype that autistic people can't feel empathy, or autistic people don't display on their face the emotions that they're feeling, and that sort of thing, or they don't feel any emotion whatsoever, which is just completely wrong. So I'm gonna say it's complete bullshit, but I'm just, you know, I'm not letting those emotions through. Dampen it down, but yeah, so a stereotype that I find quite hurtful is that that us autistic people don't feel empathy, right? Because I am one of the most sensitive. I'm very oversensitive in touch, in sound, in emotions. Sometimes we do have a lot of trouble identifying the emotions that we have, but that doesn't mean we aren't having emotions. Doesn't mean we don't have empathy, and we're not expressing empathy for your situation. We do it in a way that you don't understand. So, say you stub your toe and I go, oh, I stubbed my toe once. That's me being empathetic to your situation, right? Not, oh, that's, I don't even know what I'm supposed to say in that situation. But yeah, I think the lack of empathy, the white male-centric children, they always assume it's children. If you look up anything to do with autism or autism assessments, they always assume it's for children, and it's like, no, I'm a 32-year-old woman, like, I'm a 32-year-old they, them. Yeah, I'm a 32-year-old AFAB. Anyway, I really do not feel 32, which is also, there's a certain naivety that is associated with autistic people, and there's this idea that we're not really grown up, even if they are, even if people are looking at a autistic adult, they will think, oh, that person is very youthful, that person is very naive or innocent, which, you know, isn't always true. We just like the Lion King, okay? Trains are cool. Because we have different interests and different life values, I think we are often seen as juvenile, when we're not. Okay, so there seemed to be a lot of answer for that question. Aylin, thank you, wonderful question. I'm gonna move on now. Okay, so, Liz, I don't know what your name is there. Liz. Hi, Span. Were there aspects from growing up that you only realize were autistic traits as a result of autism in hindsight after your diagnosis. My whole life, Liz, my whole life. Yeah, okay. So a couple of things I mentioned earlier, I think, were things like eating paper and chewing on blue tack and things like that. Alright, a lot of my quirks or oddities or symptoms that I have had my entire life, I have associated with anxiety. So I often will clench my fists really hard, or dig my nails into my skin, pick the skin off my fingers, chew my nails, chew my skin, literally scratch the skin off my body when I'm stressed or when I'm in a situation that I can't handle. And all of those things are actually autistic traits, and stimming are forms of stimming, which I did not understand. I just thought it was something that I did that I couldn't control, and I knew all those things, but I still hated myself for doing them. Sometimes when I get a lot of emotion, I'll start waving my hands around like that, which I never really understood was flappy hands, which is like flappy hands, but it is, and that's an autistic trait that I've had. A lot of just my misunderstandings, or not necessarily misunderstandings, but all of my wanting to fit in with my peers, all of my leaning really hard into the art student kid, or the weird kid, or just wanting everyone to love me, so I would lean into my quirks to try and be something that everyone would accept as a stereotype of, oh, she's an art kid, and then hoping that everybody liked me for that quirk, are all symptoms or, aspects of growing up an undiagnosed autistic person. So also things like I often go through segments of my life where I just don't know what I like. I don't know how I like my eggs cooked. I don't know what my favorite hobbies are. I don't know what I like to do. I don't know even if the things that I know that I like to do. Like, I love art. Like, I've been through stages in my life where I'm like, do I even like art, or am I just doing this because that's what's expected of me? Which, it really rings true to me sometimes when I'm in my really, really bad mindset. I'm like, I don't know if I enjoy doing this, and then later I will do it for like 13 hours straight and not even know the time has passed. I sometimes have trouble identifying if I like or if I am enjoying a thing that I am doing, because I am so heavily masked all of the time, which I'm still trying to take off that mask, slowly but surely things are happening. I have assessed almost every instance of every friendship I've lost, I think, has been because of autistic traits, because of misunderstandings, because of people not... I've only really lost one friend, and I don't know if that was because of autism or not, but it really feels like it was. But whatever, we'll talk about that later. Cool, thanks Liz. I think that's probably enough, but yes, there are a lot of autistic traits that I now can recognize as it was that, okay. Megan says, I love that you are doing this. Yay, thank you. Do you think that your love for ASMR could be related to your autism diagnosis? There's a lot more to this question, but I want to ponder that one first. Maybe. So I am hypersensitive to sound, and I have a lot of trouble sleeping, but I think I like ASMR because it is a controlled sound that is designed to relax me, and I'm not very good at relaxing. I never relax. I'm very terrible at relaxing. But I think that, maybe some of my autism is, soothed and complemented by the specific ASMR sounds. So yeah, maybe there is a little bit of a correlation there. I've not really thought about it that much. My brother got me into ASMR because because he really likes unintentional ASMR, like shoe shine videos or massages or Reiki or people making things, and not the intentional type like I like I'm deliberately going to do this thing to try and give you ASMR. That's my favorite kind. He doesn't like that so much. But yeah, I think that maybe, and I also think that maybe I have hyper-focused on autism. I've definitely hyper-focused on autism, but I've also hyper-focused onto ASMR and creating ASMR. So yes, influenced by each other, I think. So what do I think are some positive aspects of autism? I think a lot of people are just focused on the disability aspect and how it can make life difficult, but I think in a lot of ways autism can make life beautiful, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts. So this is something I'm trying to do more of. I think my favorite thing about autistic people and having autism is, and this is a throwback to that thing where I'm like, why are you thanking me for being myself? I think it's authenticity. I think people who are on the autism spectrum tend to be very much themselves, and this seems to go against the idea of masking, but I think they're still themselves. They're just a far more controlled version of themselves, for presenting in society, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think autism gives me the ability to appreciate things a lot. So my special interests, for example, or my childlike naivety makes me really like stuffed toys, makes me really like The Lion King, makes me really like playing The Sims, makes me really like art. It makes me collect things. I'm a little bit of a hoarder. I like to collect things that I've picked up while I'm going for a walk. It makes me notice there's nice rocks. I really like rocks, nice shiny rocks. It makes me notice little beautiful things often, and how pretty the sunset is, and because I am noticing everything all of the time, some of those things are good things, and I think that's a really positive thing for autism, for me, for my autism. I think there's a lot of things that I think are negative, and there's a lot that I focus on how my autism hinders me, and I do need to focus more on how it can help me. There's a lot of things like I hate getting into the shower and I hate getting out of the shower, but for a few moments there while I'm in the shower and I'm just completely overwhelmed by the water and the heat and the sounds and everything while I'm physically in the shower, sometimes that is just super blissful. Like sometimes that is just amazing. It feels good. You get this rush of letting go, but that doesn't always happen. And the hard getting to that stage of being in the shower and feeling that, I don't know, joy, is a really hard point to get to. I really love nature, and I think my autism diagnosis, my autism does make me like nature more. Yeah, I think special interests also make me a little bit good at the things I want to be a little bit good at. Yeah, I don't know, it's a hard question. It's a really hard question, Megan, and I would like to focus more on positive things, which is what my therapist has told me to do. So my therapist has given me homework of making a TikTok, and she was like, make a TikTok every day, and I was like, you're supposed to not be on. Anyway, to make a TikTok every day, don't beat myself up bad if I don't do it, but about the positive quirks or positive things about autism that I've noticed. Yeah, so I've been trying to do that. So if you want to look that up, Spantopia Rose on TikTok, I'm also there, and that is where I talk about my autism the most, about my symptoms, about my gender feels, because they've got great beard apps, things. Anyway, autism can make life beautiful, and I am trying to see that more. So thank you so so much for bringing that up. Alright, so the next part of your question is, what is the process of diagnosis like, and what are the steps to diagnosis? So, the very first step to getting a diagnosis is self-diagnosing. In my opinion, that is what I believe. So if you do your research, if you look up what's in the DSM-5, if you look up all those quizzes on the internet, if you go through what is the medical standard for what autism is, if you go through all of that and you relate to those things, and you can see how those things are affecting your life, and you feel like you're always masking and trying really hard, if you identify with masking and like you're trying really hard to just survive in this society that we live in this world of modern everything happening all at once all of the time, and you relate to those things, and you can see how those things affect your life positively or negatively, and you relate so hard to those things that you would self-diagnose yourself as autistic, then I think that's the very first step of getting an actual medical proper diagnosis. So paperback also asks these questions. They say, can you talk a little about your diagnosis process? I relate a lot, but the process to see or check has always seemed prohibitive, which is true. I think self-diagnosis is 100% valid, and you don't need to go any further than that, but if you want to, what I had to do, I live in Australia, so it might be a little bit different for you where you are, but in Australia I had to book an appointment with a psychologist, or a autism-specific psychologist, who, because I'm a grown-up, my psychologist I was seeing was not qualified to give me a diagnosis. She agreed, the psychologist I was already seeing agreed that I was autistic, and referred me to some people who could make that diagnosis medically, professionally, because she did not have the qualifications, because I was over 18. She was like, if you were 17 and 11 months old, I could diagnose you, and I would, straight up, but because you're 30, I no longer have the qualifications to do this. So I had to be put on a waiting list for a telehealth assessment, which was like a Skype video call, which was horrible, and I wish I could have gone in, but anyway, so that was 12 months, I think, just under 12 months of waiting just to get that assessment, and it cost me over $1,000. I think it was $1,500 or something like that for this telehealth assessment, right? So first of all, you've got to convince yourself you're autistic, and then you have to convince your psychologist and your GP to get the referrals, to get the assessment. And then when you do finally wait the 12 months of the referral, there are lots of different ways that this process happens, but what happened for me was that it was a Skype call. So I got a couple of emails explaining what links to click, what things I needed to bring, what to be prepared for. And before this Skype call, I got a click form, like a form that I had to go through and say if this felt like me or not. And those are horrible. There are so many of those you have to do. Like, the questions are so silly. They're like, would you rather go to a library or a party? I can't answer that question. What library is it? Have I been to the library before? What's happening at the library? How many people are there at the library? Whose party is it? Is it a party I know that everyone at the party is? Do I know what music's going to be playing? Do I know what food is going to be at this party? Where are the quiet parts of this party? Can I leave the party at any time? Like, I would rather go to a party full of people I know than a library on my own. I would rather go to a library on my own than a party full of people I don't know. Like, I needed more specifics on the questions, and then you just had to answer one or the other, and it was horrendous and I hated it. So I had to do many of those forms, right? And then they get sent away to those professionals to look through, and then the interview process happens. So it's Skype, and I got called in first, and I had to have two people. I had to have somebody who knew me in my childhood to also be part of my assessment. So I had my mum and my sister there, and I got called in first by myself, basically, and the lady doing the assessment just asked me a whole bunch of questions about myself and bad things that have happened in my life and good things that have happened in my life, and pardon me, and about my past, about going to school, about work, about driving, just about my life, just every aspect of my life. Basically, it was like she was quizzing me on my own life, which was very strange experience. But yeah, we just ended up talking and chatting, and one of the things that she said that proved to her that I was autistic was that my facial expressions did not match the things I was saying. So I was telling her some pretty bad things, some pretty upsetting things, and I was laughing and smiling while I was crying and telling her. So she was like, that mismatch of emotions shown to emotions told is one of the things that she really thought was diagnostic for me, in that that's the one she pointed out to me anyway. Alright, third time's the charm. I talk a lot about your diagnosis project. I relate a lot with the process to see your check. I've always been prohibitive, yeah. So she had an interview with me, and she talked to me about my life and everything that was going on in my life, and then I left, and my mum and my sister went in without me. So without me in the room, they talked about me and my life and what I was like as a child and what they had observed, and things like that. If I'm repetitive, if I say the same things at the same points, or when I'm doing the same thing, do I say the same things? I don't know, weird things like that, that I thought was kind of normal, and so did my mum, and my sister was like, but we definitely do that though. My god, how do I turn this off? How do you turn this thing off? Alright, there we go, try again. So my mum and my sister went in and talked to her all about the things that I couldn't remember when I was too young to remember, but then you have to remember, this was 31 years ago, so they were having difficulty remembering as well, and especially like interactions that I had as a child, and the things that, you know, like I always had trouble sleeping even when I was very small. I remember being in kindergarten and being too anxious to get up and say I can't sleep. Yeah, anyway, the diagnosis project, yeah, so then we all went away and had lunch, and while we were having lunch, I can't remember her name, but the psychologist who was assessing me went through everything and all of her notes and all of the things, and then on that day, thank goodness, on that day, she gave me the feedback that yes, she did agree that I did have autism. So in that process, she went through all of the things that she had observed or about me, or that she had been told, the answers that made the correlation with a diagnosis of autism, and that was a huge relief for me in that moment. I was like, thank God we didn't go through all of that for no diagnosis. So in that feedback, she did give me some levels of diagnosis, the support levels. So I got ASD level 1, which means that, so 1 to 3, so you can be level 1, level 2, or level 3 in different aspects of the diagnosis areas, right? So I think there's 3 or 4 areas, and then you have to meet enough things in each of those areas to have the overall autism diagnosis, which I did at level 1, which is the lowest support needs. So it means that if I was level 3, I would need higher support needs like communication, devices where I could type out what I wanted to say because I wouldn't be able to speak. So I got level 1, which has been slightly problematic for me because there's a thing in Australia called the NDIS, which is for a disability scheme where you can get money from the government to pay for accommodations, but because I'm level 1, I'm seen as not needing as many accommodations in my life as somebody who would be, say, level 3. hindrance, but that's a whole different thing that I don't know enough about to really comment on yet. But I do feel slightly disadvantaged because of the level of autism that I've been diagnosed with. I already was on the disability pension before I got my autism diagnosis, so it didn't help with that. I was on that for other diagnoses such as anxiety and depression and panic attacks. So I was already on the DSP by the time I got this autism diagnosis, so it doesn't really help me in any way for like the government or anything like that, but it has helped internally with knowing myself and knowing who I am. Right, so what I can see happening is that you can self-diagnose yourself, say, yes, I think I have these things, and then you can be so good at masking those things, so good at answering questions in ways that you think that people want to hear because you've been doing it for 30 years, right? That you might go through that whole assessment process and not be diagnosed with autism. I have heard horror stories like this before, and I think what you can do then is get a second opinion if you can afford it, or fall back on your self-diagnosis. It just means you don't have the medical backing if you need that for any purposes. So I think it is very restrictive in that it takes a long time. It is extremely stressful and very expensive. Very expensive. Money is, you need a lot of money. I had to borrow money from my parents, thank God I could do that. Self-diagnosis is in some ways more valid than medical diagnosis, especially for self-worth and self-assessment and self-growth. I think that getting the medical diagnosis really helped me, though. The medical professional saying, yes, I agree with you, really gave me the confirmation that I needed personally to believe in myself. So there's that. I think that's enough information about I think that's all that I have to say about getting a diagnosis and the process of diagnosis. That I experienced. I think it's different in different countries. Okay, so paperback also asks, how do I deal with emotional dips when you start to lose a big interest or hobby? Alright, I get severely depressed. I'm not very good at dealing with emotions at the best of times. But I definitely get emotional dips. I get really low if I'm trying to do something that I used to love that I don't have any passion for now. I get upset, I get angry, and I get a little bit self-hating, because I'm like, I thought you liked art, Anna, Span, you're so fickle. I thought you would love reading Rainbow Rowell novels, and then you've had the next one in the series that you're as obsessed with is just sitting gathering dust on your bookshelf, and there's no reason that you're not reading it other than you don't want to. What's going on? That's a very specific personal example there, but I get confused and I get upset, and I deal with that by trying not to beat myself up about it, by thinking to myself, I will come back to this later. My passion will be restored eventually. I don't have to like reading. Just because I used to like reading doesn't mean I have to like reading right now, even if I want to. Doesn't mean I can. I can't always do the things that I want to do, and that is okay. So I go through little mantras in my head about self-acceptance and self-worth, and the idea that this is temporary, that these bad days will end, So even though I'm having a hard time reading books I really want to read right now, doesn't mean I'm never going to want to read them. It just means that the interests and the hobbies are I'm just sit on standby for a little while. The same thing happens with safe foods. When I get a safe food that I can no longer eat, that's upsetting. which is very difficult. Just a little bit of self-compassion and doing other things that do interest me if I can find something that I do enjoy. Just doing those things. Just doing those things. And if there's nothing, just literally lying on my bed. Just lying on my bed for hours, for no reason, not really doing anything. Maybe scrolling on my phone, maybe with a book next to me. Just lying down, having a rest. It's okay to rest. You don't have to have earned your rest. You can just rest. You can just rest. It's okay to rest. Yeah, so just telling myself it's okay, basically, because it is okay. Alright, Spirited Sun. Hello, Spirited Sun. I love you. Spirited Sun ASMR. If you haven't checked out their channel, go and do it now. She's amazing. Right, so she says, noise cancelling headphones has helped me loads with overstimulation. I'm glad you were able to get your hands on some. Me too, thank you. And our battery died, so we're just gonna persevere. We're gonna do this like what, the 4th time I've had to restart that. I've had to come back to this. Okay, the 4th time I've been interrupted. Anyway, 4th time's the charm. Spirited Sun, where were we? Happy Autism Acceptance Month, yay! Happy Autism Acceptance Month, everyone. Yes, happy. With my personal process, I was diagnosed with other things first, depression, OCD, etc., which ended up to be mostly autism related instead of a bunch of little things that I know people who that's happened to as well. Yep. Did you find yourself kind of taking pieces of other mental illnesses before finding autism that fully encapsulates what you are feeling? Do you remember your first special interest was and when you realized that you were more into a topic than your peers? Okay, so let's, first question. Brilliant question. Brilliant observation. Yes, absolutely. So, so you've said that other things got diagnosed first, like depression and OCD, correct? Me too. So I have generalized anxiety disorder, and I have had this diagnosed since I was about 13 or 14. I have PCOS, which means my hormones really mess with me and my life, and my emotions, but also when I'm PMSing, I get extra hypersensitive to things, so I won't like the feel of certain textures that I used to like while I'm hormonal. I won't like, certain foods cannot be eaten at certain times of the month. My hypersensitivities are greatly affected by my hormonal changes, and that is something I've only just realized in the last 6 months. I'm really trying to deal with that. But yeah, PCOS, OCD. I once got diagnosed with backwards OCD. This was a guy who told me I was a fascinating mental case and wanted me to go to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist wanted to put me on really strong antipsychotic meds, and they wanted me to go to a basically a mental institution. They thought I was quite unwell, but they didn't really diagnose me with anything at that time because they didn't know where to put me, because I didn't fit in any of the other boxes of the things that they were trying to diagnose me for. If they'd have known their stuff, they may have picked up that I was autistic, but that just wasn't an option. That just wasn't what they were seeing. What they were seeing was fascinating mental case, or someone who doesn't fit into a prescribed box because they're not male, they're not young, they're not autistic enough, or it just didn't even cross their minds. So anyway, I have a long history of diagnoses that didn't quite fit. They suggested things like bipolar but without the extreme highs. They suggested OCD but backwards, so I liked chaos and I couldn't stand things being too clean, or just having the obsessions without having the compulsions as much. So compulsive thoughts but not compulsive actions. Obsessions, definitely. I also have very strong, every single time I go anywhere, I get assessed with having depression, and I think this is just because my mind works differently. So they're like, how often have you thought about the future? And I'm just like, not at all. And they're like, do you have hope for the future? And I'm like, not at all. And they're like, oh my gosh, this person is so depressed. And I'm like, I just don't I just don't have hopes for the future. Like, I don't know. I do think that I do go through bouts of depression, and I think I'm low level depressed all of the time. But I feel like that's not due to major severe depression. I think it's due to autism, but that's just my own personal interpretation of what I'm feeling. But yes, I definitely pick and choose different coping mechanisms and aspects from different diagnoses that I've had over my life. But the ones that really stayed with me are depression and generalized anxiety disorder, because I have panic attacks, panic disorder as on top of. I did go through a bit there where I thought, oh, meltdowns, that explains all of my panic attacks, but it doesn't explain them all. So I think I have both. I think I have both generalized anxiety disorder with panic attacks and autism. I think the panic attacks are because of my autistic traits that I didn't know about, and has developed into the noises, and has developed into disorders of their own, anxiety and panic, stemming from undiagnosed, unknown autism traits. Right, so yes, I have had many diagnosed, like eating disorders and stuff as well, that have been autistic traits more than what I feel to be eating disorders, even though it was diagnosed as such. Anyway, so yes, I think autism does fully encapsulate what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing in life, along with some other diagnoses as well, because autism does encapsulate all of those things. But I also think that I have ADHD as well, because that's a self-diagnosis. But I think it's a separate thing. I think it's separate enough that yes, I do have both. Because the advice for just purely autistic people is very different to the advice for people with ADHD as well, and they clash. God, they clash so hard. Because if I try and follow a routine too much, I go insane, and if I don't have a routine, I go insane. So yeah, I think that there are different diagnoses working against each other in me, but I also agree that it is mostly autistic traits. Okay, so do I remember what my first special interest was, or when I realized you were more into a topic than your peers? Yes, so I was very young and I was absolutely obsessed with the Titanic. I don't remember when I watched the movie. I think I liked the concept of the unsinkable ship sinking before I was allowed to watch the movie. I had this book, it was blue, and it was about Titanic facts, and I loved that book. I took that book with me everywhere. It was always in my school bag, and my favourite fact that I still remember to this day, like, I don't remember what I did all of last week, but I remember that there was a boy who was on the Titanic, and the Titanic sunk, and he survived, and he made it to England, and he then died in a car accident 1 week later. So my little Catholic school brain was like, God sank that entire ship just to kill that one little boy, but it wasn't enough, and he survived only to have God smite him in a car accident a week later. That's where my mind went, and I have never forgotten that. And I love that the chef drank so much alcohol that his blood didn't freeze when he rode the ship down like a wave. He rode it down into the ocean, spent the least amount of time as he could in the freezing cold, literally freezing people around him's blood, but he was so drunk that the alcohol in his system kept him alive, and he survived to be rescued. I love the Titanic, that they didn't have enough lifeboats for the amount of people that were on that ship. They just didn't have enough, because they believed that they had an unsinkable ship. They thought they would never need them. They thought they would use them as ferries only. So, yeah, I was very young, and I knew all these things, and that's just the facts I knew now. When I was younger, I knew more facts. But yeah, I was obsessed with the Titanic. No one else cared. No other little, I don't know, 7-year-old, I don't know how old I was, small children, no other small children knew. They didn't care. They were like, I've heard of that, maybe. That's it. And I loved it. Yeah, so I think that was my first special interest and hyperfixation. I also, when I was in year 6, I read Lord of the Rings for the second time, and I also I knew a lot of things about books that I was reading. When other people wanted to play games, I wanted to read books. So they would be playing games, like playing house, and I'd be like, okay, but this is the library. I'm gonna sit here and read. And I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I read Lord of the Rings when I was young, and those books are weighty. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I think that's when I realized I was more into topics than the people around me, was from the Titanic when I was very young. That was when I really realized that no one else cared, and I was like, but what about, and would tell them something that they would be not listening to me about. Yep, alright. That's an excellent question. Thank you so much, Spirited Sun. I wonder what yours might have been. Okay, so I hope your days get better since you said you've been struggling of late. Thank you. They haven't yet, but they will. Things are things. I don't have COVID, so I'm happy. Okay, sunflower. Hello, sunflower. It's been a minute. How are you? This is the last question, and you just asked it yesterday. So, have your friends and family been supportive of your diagnosis? Yes. Has it impacted or changed your relationships with anyone? Yes. How would you recommend helping or supporting individuals in our own lives that have autism? Oh, good question. Okay, so have my friends and family been supportive of my diagnosis? Yes, all except for one. So I had a major falling out around the same time that I was realizing I was autistic, and I was assessing my life, and I was being very critical of things in my life, and I was expressing that to this one friend who was my best friend at the time, and she was not taking the things that I was saying in a good light for her, because a lot of our relationship was me mimicking her to try and fit into society, and I realized that, and I was voicing some things, I guess, that she was finding mean. Alright, sixth time's the charm. Alright, real quick, just gonna finish this up. Sunflower. So yes, I did have one major falling out with a friend of mine who had been a really close best friend for many years, and we had a big falling out just at the same time that I got my diagnosis, and she said to me that she agreed that she felt worse every time she spoke to me, so we stopped speaking to each other, and that was a really big adjustment in my life, because this was a person that I would tell everything to. This was a person who, if I was waiting for something, I would just message and be like, oh my god, I'm so bored, I'm waiting, blah blah blah, and fill my time with her. And now that that's not there, big adjustment. But yeah, I do miss her, and I feel like part of our falling out was definitely because of autistic traits that I was recognizing, and that our relationship was quite toxic, actually, and I think that she was very mean to me, and I had been taking a lot of things, like taking a lot of shit that I didn't need to be taking, so yeah, we had a big falling out over that. Yeah, I don't think we were good for each other, so it is probably a good thing in the long run, but it was a huge adjustment, and it's hard to say if that was going to come anyway, even if I didn't get my autism diagnosis, but yeah. Alright, what is this? This is interruption 6, 7, anyway. Editing span. What you're gonna do is you're gonna stop editing, and you're gonna go to Officeworks, and you're gonna buy the biggest brightest, shiniest SD card you possibly can, because this one doesn't work at all, and that one that you're using is not enough. It's not. You need more. You need more cards being filled twice. Who knew this video was going to be this long? Not me. Alright, I'm glad I've broken this up and stopped the comments there. So if you do have any more questions, please leave them below, and I will make more videos like this, but I'll make them shorter. Maybe that's a lie. I won't. Okay, so okay. What are you doing, Span? Last question. Sunflower. Hi, Sunflower. Alright. Have my family been supportive of my diagnosis? Yes, all of my family have been extremely supportive. Even like the cousins and stuff that I've talked to have been great. My friends have been supportive, except for one who I had a falling out with. Whether or not that was over autism or not, hard to say. But it was around the same time. Okay. So has it impacted or changed your relationships with anyone? Just that one friend that I mentioned. The relationships I have with everyone else have stayed solid. It does help in explaining why sometimes I might need a little bit more explanation for things, or why I misinterpreted a situation, or why I'm suddenly offended for apparently no reason. I'm like, oh, maybe this is an autism thing, and then we can talk it through more. And that's just with like the people closest to me. I don't have a lot of acquaintances, so it's hard to say how it would have affected my life in other settings, but yeah, it's been helpful in knowing myself and being able to explain myself to others as well. So how would I recommend helping or supporting individuals in our own lives that have autism? Okay, so this is so specific for the individual in your life, but in general I would say talk to them, listen to them. So if somebody is saying that they need something, listen to them. I think it's really easy to assume that you know something about someone because of their diagnosis, but that might not necessarily be true, and if they say otherwise, believe them. I think listening and believing people when they tell you things about their experiences, that's really important. Even if what they're saying is that they don't know, believe that they don't know. So if you're like, what's wrong, and they're like, I don't know, when clearly they're having what you think is a reaction to a very busy environment, then you can't assume that that's what's going on. If they don't know what's going on, you can assume that this is what's happening, but you have to recognize that they don't know that that's what's happening, if that makes sense. So I guess just being there for that person in whatever form that they need you to be there or not be there, then that's important. Okay, so it's so specific to each individual person that it is so hard to give advice for how to be supporting or helpful for people on the spectrum. But I guess just try not to rely on assumptions about autism. Try to lean on what you know about that person as an individual, and what they want and need, what their wants and needs are. As a person, I think that a diagnosis is not an answer for how to treat someone, if that makes any sense. So I think that yes, you should treat everyone with kindness and respect and tolerance, but I think that you have to be very careful, because not everyone on the spectrum is the same, and overall trying to say this works for me doesn't mean it will work for the people in your life who have autism. I think just being respectful and kind and listening to that person and their wants and needs, and not being scared of the person. So I think being open and honest and talking about stuff is great, and if they don't want to do that, don't push them on it. Just try and be really respectful of their wants and needs. Yeah, as I would say that for every single person, but I think listening to somebody who feels unheard is really powerful, and a lot of people on the spectrum feel like they're unheard because they've been gaslit about so much their entire life. Like when like I get really cold really quickly and I can be like, oh my god, it's freezing, and everyone else is like, no, it's not cold, it's not even cold. And then I think there's something wrong with me because I'm cold and they're not cold, so therefore I shouldn't be cold. But that's not how it works, right? I think the best thing in that situation is when I'm like, I'm really cold, then you can be like, oh, you could put a jumper on, you could have a warm shower, you know. It sucks that you are feeling this way. Not saying it's not cold, just suck it up. That's not helpful in any way. And I think acknowledging that their experience of life is different from yours in a way that does not sound patronizing is difficult but important. So even if it's just acknowledging in your own brain that, okay, they are feeling cold, they are feeling cold, that is really a thing that they are experiencing, is that they are feeling freezing right now, even though you like don't even have a top on. They are cold. Warm them up. Like they might need warming up. It's as simple as that. And this is a physical thing for me, so I sometimes get, let me just check this is actually recording. Yeah, good. I sometimes get a thermometer and test my physical like self, and I will have hypothermia when nobody else does around me, which is bizarre, but it's a real physical thing that is happening in my body, and I need to warm myself up so I don't have hypothermia anymore. So just being supportive and understanding of the fact that other people experience life different to you. Everyone experiences life so different, but I think autistic and neurodivergent people especially so. Alright, I'm done. I'm finally done. This has taken so many hours. Alright, so that is all of the questions that I have under that video finished, and if you are still here, thank you so much for being here. I hope that you learned some things. I hope that you found this video helpful in some way, relaxing maybe, who knows. But if you have any further questions, please leave them below. I am more than happy to do this as an ongoing series. If I get questions, I will answer them. So questions, comments, things you want me to talk about in the next segment of this series, let me know in the comments below. Happy Autism Acceptance Month,